Joanne, bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue à une conférence de presse avec le chef du NPD, Jagmeet Singh, et député néo-démocrate pour Port Moody, Coquitlam, Bonita Zarillo. On va commencer avec quelques remarques d'introduction. Ensuite, nous allons prendre des questions sur place. Par la suite, nous irons sur Zoom pour les questions en ligne. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a press conference with Leader of Canada's NDP, Jagmeet Singh, joined by Bonita Zarillo, MP for Port Moody, Coquitlam. After some introductory remarks, we will go to questions on set, and then we will take questions via Zoom. So, Bonita, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm Bonita Zarillo, the Member of Parliament for Port Moody, Coquitlam, and Morin Belcara, and I'm here today on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish, shared territories of the Coast Salish people. No one in Canada, whether adult or child, should have to worry about paying for their medication. And today we're going to talk about universal pharmacare. The NDP have been pushing for a single-payer universal pharmacare. And I have with me today Linda from Port Moody that's going to talk about her experience with diabetes. Also Jagmeet Singh, that leader of the NDP that we'll hear from soon. I just, as a woman standing here, I want to talk about the free birth control. So as part of the universal single pay pharmacare, we will have free birth control. And as a woman, I know how important it is to have control over your own body. And diabetic medication. Many advocates and allies from Junior Diabetes Canada have come to my office and talked to me. Teens have come to my office to talk to me about how worried they are about the price of the medication and the pressure that it puts on their family. This is so unfair. This shouldn't be in Canada. So I'm very pleased today to be able to pass the mic over to Linda from Port Moody. Welcome, Linda. Thank you for being here. And she's going to tell us about her experience with diabetes and how important it is to have coverage for this important medication. There you go, Linda.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Linda.
I'm sorry. I'm Linda Zumm. I'm almost 70 years old. I'll be turning 70 in the next month. And I've had type 1 diabetes for 44 years. I was diagnosed when I was 26, and I had no idea what diabetes was. And I was in a very bad way. However, over the years, I've had some coverage, but from my workplace, but overall, it's not 100% coverage. So I would say, and now I wear a pump, and I've been using a pump for 12 years, and that is some coverage, but not fully covered. And so over 44 years, it's probably $100,000 with dental and gum surgery and with other things that have happened. So, you know, it's $100,000 that I probably spent in my lifetime having to pay for my medication and also for my devices. Since I've been on the pump, which is 12 years now, my husband and my family have never called 911. That is a very important point because it will cost like $8,000 for one 911 call. And basically, you know, by not calling for 12 years, whereas he was calling at least like every 2 months for 911 calls because I was passing out and because my sugar levels were low and he couldn't recover. So it is a very important issue, and we are fully capable of leading a perfectly healthy and productive life, providing we have the devices and the medication to help us. And we should not, even now in retirement, have to worry about having to pay for this medication or for these devices to keep us alive. We are fully productive. We work in our communities, and we do volunteer work, and we need to have these devices in order to have a healthy physical life. And we won't get all the complications of diabetes if we can control our sugar levels.
That's right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you. And Linda was being very modest. Linda's also someone who's very healthy, has been healthy throughout her entire life, eats well, exercises, mentioned that she does yoga as well, goes for walks. And despite that, of course, has an illness that is something that you can't control. Type 1 diabetes is something that comes on sometimes in your 30s, sometimes in your 20s, in Linda's case, in her 20s, and you have to live with it for the rest of your life. So our message is for someone like Linda to have spent so much money out of pocket over a lifetime, over $100,000 out of pocket. Linda spends $3,000 a year now, even in retirement, on a fixed income. I think that's wrong. I think someone who's worked their entire life like Linda has contributed so much, shouldn't be spending thousands of dollars out of pocket for medication just to stay alive. I think that's wrong. I think that should be covered. And that's why Bonita and I, the New Democratic team, fought to make sure that everyone in our country, including Linda, has free diabetes medication and devices. And as Linda pointed out, the devices are so essential. What is offensive to me is for someone like Linda and the thousands and thousands of people like Linda who need this medication to stay alive, who are on fixed incomes and are having a hard time figuring out how to afford it, and spending money out of pocket to stay alive, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives want to take that coverage away from Linda and people like Linda. Pierre Poilievre has already put in place a motion to stop pharmacare before it even begins. He wants to take that away from Linda and from the millions of people that live with diabetes. He wants to take that away from them. And our message is no. We're going to fight back. We're going to make sure Linda gets free medication for her diabetes and devices. And we're going to make sure that everyone in our country that needs it gets that medication and those devices. We know that this is actually a story of the upcoming election, that the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre want to take away from families. They want to take away not just Medicare. They want to take away the free dental care we fought for. They want to take away the school food program for kids. They want to take away the things that people need. They want to cut and gut the services that families need. That is wrong. That is not a choice that's going to make life better for working people. And people have told me when it comes to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, they are feeling fed up and frustrated. Things have gotten worse, and they don't see that this government can respond to those concerns. They don't believe that Justin Trudeau is going to be able to respond to the concerns they have. They've had enough of him. And so the change that people have, the choice that people have for change is between the Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives who want to cut the things that you need, make life harder for working people, or New Democrats and my team who want to make sure we invest in people. We make sure Linda has free diabetes medication and devices. We invest in people, we lift people up, and we take on the real challenges that people are faced with. That's the choice that we have in this upcoming election. New Democrats who want to fight for you, take on corporate greed to bring down the cost of living, invest in you and your families with pharmacare, with dental care, with childcare, making sure people can afford to have a good life in our country. That's a choice that people have in this next election. And so our message to Pierre Poilievre is we're going to fight back and make sure that Linda gets her medication covered. We're going to make sure that everyone in our country gets that medication covered that they need. We're going to make sure we build a better country together. I'll do that again in French, and then I look forward to your questions. Donc, c'est clair que ce que Linda a partagé, Linda est une personne âgée, elle vit avec, elle est diabète et elle doit payer 3 000 $ par moyenne chaque année pour vivre, pour payer pour ses médicaments et appareils. Je pense, pour quelqu'un qui a contribué toute leur vie, qu'elle ne doit pas payer 3 000 $ par année seulement pour vivre. Je pense que c'est inacceptable. On doit couvrir cette coût. Ça, c'est pourquoi on travaille fort pour mettre en œuvre une assurance médicaments qui couvre les médicaments et les appareils pour les diabètes. Ça, c'est quelque chose qui va sauver l'argent. Pour Linda, ça va sauver au moins 3 000 $ par année. Et pour quelqu'un qui a un salaire fixe, ça va changer vraiment la vie. C'est une grande économisation d'argent. Et la première chose que Pierre Poilievre a dit, il veut couper ça. Il veut couper l'aide à Linda. Il veut arrêter cette aide. On a un message fort pour Pierre Poilievre. On rejette votre approche On va se battre contre vous pour assurer que Linda reçoit la couverture qu'elle mérite et que les millions de personnes à travers le pays méritent d'avoir la couverture pour le médicament diabète et pour les appareils. Et c'est vraiment le choix dans la prochaine élection. Un choix entre les conservateurs de Pierre Poilievre qui veut couper les services dont vous avez besoin ou les libéraux qui ont déjà montré, et les gens me disent qu'ils sont déconnectés, ils ne répondent pas aux besoins des gens, ou les néo-démocrates, notre équipe, qui nous sommes là pour vous. On va se battre pour vous. On va investir davantage pour aider les gens, les travailleurs, pour la classe ouvrière, pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde. La choix est clair. On est là pour vous. On va investir dans les services dont vous avez besoin. On va réduire les coûts en faisant face à la avarice et la cupidité de grandes entreprises, et on va investir davantage pour les programmes comme l'assurance médicaments. Pierre Poilievre wants to take away Linda's medication, take away medication from people living with diabetes. We reject that. We're going to fight back and make sure that Linda gets her medication covered and all people living with diabetes get their medication covered in this country. Merci. And with that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Okay, we're going to start with questions on site. We'll do one question, one follow-up. We're going to start with Tri-City News.
Can I ask a question, Linda?
Yes.
Can you spell your last name for us, please?
ZUMM.
Zumm. Now, you're retired.
Yes.
How do you pay for your supplies now? And presumably you don't have a private benefits plan.
Actually, from the company I work for.
We'll just come right to the mic here. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, yes, I do. I'm about one of the 4% from our company that I get coverage up until I die. And my husband, because I had more than 25 years, my husband also is covered as well. It's covered 80% for medical. And for the dental, it's just a dollar amount, which is $1,200 per person. And also for glasses is $200 every 2 years.
So follow up for Jagmeet. This is obviously someone who's very lucky to be retired and still have some sort of coverage. How is this coverage going to come in to allow people who don't have that kind of coverage to help them and some of the expenses they face?
Well, Linda's example is really important because even though Linda has some coverage, as Linda mentioned, 80% coverage, it still means thousands of dollars out of pocket a year. And I want folks to take that in. Linda has coverage, but she's still spending out of pocket thousands of dollars a year and has been doing so for her lifetime dealing with the illness of diabetes. So take in how much money Linda has spent out of pocket just to stay alive. This isn't out of pocket for a luxury. Linda's spending money out of her own pocket so that she can live. And Pierre Poilievre wants to take that away, the coverage that we were fighting for. On top of that, what Linda pointed out is when she didn't have something like a glucose monitor device or a continuous pump, that there were many times in her life where she would faint. And as a result, of course, we don't know what's happening. Your blood sugar could be at a critical level. The natural and very appropriate response was to call an ambulance. And Linda had to go into the hospital. The cost of that is something that the healthcare system had to bear. So when Linda and I were chatting, she said, one, of course, it's better for my quality of life, but it also saves money for everybody to have the right prevention in place, the right steps in place so that people don't actually end up fainting and having a crash of their blood sugars that puts their life at risk. Having the preventative measures in place actually saves money. And so in Linda's case, we're talking $3,000 a year. But for someone who has no coverage, this could be incredibly life-changing. For folks that are spending tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket, this could really make a huge difference in their lives. So what we're proposing, what the program would be, is for any province that signs up, anyone in that province. So here in BC, if someone's living with diabetes, either type 1 or type 2, their medical devices and their medication will be entirely covered. The same way the current birth control program works, you go into a pharmacy, your birth control is covered. Similarly, medical devices and medication will be covered with a federal program. That would be life-changing. I was talking to Linda about it, and she mentioned also the anxiety. Though she's got coverage, she's got to call a host of different people to try to patch together the coverage to cover what she needs. That's complicated, that's stressful, creates lots of anxiety. And I said, well, what would it be like if you didn't have to worry about any of that and this medication and these devices were covered with a one-stop shop national program? She's like, I wouldn't feel that anxiety anymore. I wouldn't feel that worry anymore. And think about what it means that the Conservatives want to take that away from Linda before it even begins. They want to take that away. How callous is that? Well, that's what Pierre Poilievre wants to do. He's already tabled a motion to stop pharmacare. So he's telling people living with diabetes, you're not worth it. Well, I reject that. I think you are worth it. You deserve to have medication that's covered. Linda is worth it. Everyone out there that's living with diabetes is worth it. And we're going to fight to make sure the Conservatives don't win this fight, that we actually get that coverage for you and your families.
Okay, I think with that, we're going to go to questions on Zoom.
Perfect. Alors, juste rappeler tout le monde en ligne d'utiliser la fonction lever la main pour poser une question de suivi. Just a reminder for folks online to please use the raise hand function for a question and a follow-up. Nous allons commencer avec Michel Sabat avec la presse canadienne. C'est à vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh.
Bonjour, monsieur.
On ne va pas du tout vous surprendre. Allez-vous finalement mettre fin aujourd'hui à cet insoutenable suspense et nous dire si vous allez appuyer le budget?
On n'a pas pris cette décision. On attend d'une rencontre avec le Premier ministre. Comme j'ai dit, on est fiers qu'on a forcé le gouvernement de mettre en œuvre quelques éléments importants comme le programme de nourriture pour les enfants à l'école, le fait qu'on a forcé le gouvernement d'aller de l'avant avec une protection, un fonds pour protéger les locataires et le fait que on a eu la capacité, avec notre pression, de forcer le gouvernement de faire ces grandes choses pour enlever un peu de pression sur les épaules des familles. Ça, c'est quelque chose de positif, mais on a des inquiétudes. Bonita, comme ma porte-parole, a mentionné la même chose, le fait que l'argent pour les gens qui vivent en situation de handicap, l'argent est trop petit. $200 par mois, c'est trop petit. Donc, on a des inquiétudes et on va soulever ces inquiétudes pour répondre c'est quoi la réponse du gouvernement avant de finalement prononcer sur le budget.
D'accord, merci. Sur un sujet connexe, vous avez refusé des dizaines de fois la semaine dernière de répondre clairement si vous appuyez ou non une taxe sur l'essence que paient les automobilistes à la pompe. Ne croyez-vous pas que ce type de comportement alimente le cynisme de la population envers les politiciens?
Pas du tout. J'ai dit que notre position n'a pas changé. J'ai dit aussi qu'on appuie fortement un prix sur la pollution. On a vécu l'impact de la crise climatique ici au Canada. J'ai vécu l'impact de la crise climatique et de la température extrême quand j'ai visité le territoire nord-ouest et j'ai vu les familles, j'ai rencontré les familles qui ont dû évacuer leur maison et puis évacuer la capitale. J'ai vu l'impact dans les régions où ils ont fait face des records inondations et aussi des feux de forêt records dans le même endroit dans un an. Donc, j'ai vécu ça, les Canadiens ont vécu ça, j'ai vu ça. Je comprends l'importance de faire face à cette crise climatique et de faire tout ce qu'on peut. Notre position n'a pas changé, mais j'ai dit que l'approche du gouvernement libéral n'est pas juste. Et j'ai souligné, j'ai donné un exemple clair, le fait que le gouvernement libéral continue de donner des milliards de dollars de subventions aux grandes entreprises pétrolières, mais refuse d'aider les familles et les travailleurs qui ont besoin d'aide pour acheter un thermopompe. Ça, c'est une approche injuste. Et j'insiste que ça, c'est une approche injuste. Je vais continuer de dire ça. Notre plan que je veux présenter, c'est un plan où on fait face à la crise climatique, on réduit nos émissions, on attaque les grands pollueurs, on fait face aux grands pollueurs et un plan qui est juste pour les travailleurs.
We will now go to Marina with CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Will the NDP support the federal budget, yes or no?
We've not made that decision yet, and we've raised a number of concerns. We've said that there's things that we fought for that are in the budget that are good for people, that'll help reduce costs, things like the protection fund for renters, the school food nutrition program, pharmacare, which is going to lower the cost for families. So those are things that are very positive that we fought for that will lower costs. But we raised concerns, and with Bonita beside me, one of the concerns we both raised is the fact that the disability benefit is only $200 a month, far too low. So we've got to hear from the Prime Minister and the Liberals on what their response is to our concerns before we make a decision.
As you mentioned, the government has brought in measures that the NDP has asked for, including in this budget, yet you're not committing to vote in favor of it at this point. You keep threatening to pull your support for the government, but then you continue to support it. So at this point, is this an empty threat?
Well, we said very clearly that unlike the Conservatives who just decided the way they're voting before looking at it, that we would look very clearly at the budget, we would reflect on it with our team, and we've raised some concerns. We've not heard yet a response to our concerns, and so we'll wait to hear that response before we give you a decision. But we're approaching this in a serious manner. We take what we fought for very seriously. These are very important things. Our concerns are also very serious. We want to hear a response before we make our decision.
We will now go to Mickey with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Will an NDP government keep the Liberals' carbon price plan to $170 per ton by 2030?
Well, what we said is on the carbon price, our position hasn't changed. We believe there's a price on pollution that should be there.
Will you keep it then? Will you keep that a carbon price plan to $170 per ton by 2030?
Well, so far what we said is that our position hasn't changed, but we are saying that the Liberals' plan is unfair, and there's elements of that plan that are very unfair. And I've outlined one specific element, which I think is glaring in how unfair it is. The Liberals think it's okay to give billions of dollars to oil and gas companies to subsidize them, particularly when they're highly profitable. They're making record profits. Why does that make any sense to continue to give them billions of dollars and then say to working people, we don't have any money for you to support you in trying to put in place a thermal pump or a heat pump in your home? That's unfair. And that type of approach is something that Canadians look at and say, well, that doesn't really feel like we're all fighting this climate crisis together. You're choosing big oil and gas over us. And so what we've said, our plan that we will put forward is one that is fair for working people, takes on the big polluters, and lowers our emissions.
Mickey, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I guess, that's kind of what the Conservatives are campaigning on is, put the responsibility more on heavy emitters.
Not at all. We're going.
Well, they have campaigned on that in the past, and they want to scrap the carbon price. We've heard Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives say they want to scrap the carbon price plan. We know where the Liberals stand on this, yet there's confusion over where the NDP stands on this. Why can't you give Canadians a clear answer of whether or not you support the carbon price and whether you do support it going to $170 per ton by 2030? This has been in place since 2019. We know the position of the Conservatives. We know the position of the Liberals. Why does there appear to be sudden backpedaling of this?
Well, first of all, I think that we've got to be clear. The Conservatives' plan is no plan. They want to allow for big polluters to pollute as much as they want. They have no such plan to say they want to reduce pollution. They're saying to Canadians, those big polluters that dump toxic waste in rivers, no price on that. Dump as much as you want. The big polluters that pollute our air, that pollute our land, our water, they can do whatever they want. So we should be very clear about what Poilievre is saying. He's saying pollute as much as you want, make as much profit as you want, and damage the environment, damage our planet, damage kids as much as you want. That's the Conservative plan. And people can make a choice if they think that's okay, but that is actually their plan. Pollute as much as you want. The Liberals' plan is unfair. Now, the price on pollution is just one piece of taking on the climate crisis. If that is the entirety of the plan, then that is a colossal failure as well. There's much more to taking on the climate crisis than just the price on pollution. And we know that the Liberals have other elements to it, which are very abundantly unfair. And I've pointed those out. Our position has not changed, we've said. We maintain that the price on pollution is important, but I've given you a very concrete example, and I've given Canadians a concrete example of how the Liberal plan is unfair. Why is it they have billions of dollars for oil and gas companies to subsidize them with our money for free for record profit-making companies, but they don't have money for Canadians to say, we want to install a heat pump? Imagine a way for Canadians to choose a heat pump that will help them make that right choice to lower their costs, to lower their emissions, and make life more affordable. That would have a significant impact on our fight against the climate crisis. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the unfair approach of the Liberals. I support a price on pollution, but I do not support the Liberals' approach, which is unfair, which pits everyday Canadians on one side and big oil and gas companies on the other and they choose big oil and gas. That is wrong.
We have one last question. Nous avons une dernière question. Andréane avec Radio-Canada, c'est à vous.
Oui, bonjour. C'est concernant la méga usine de Honda de véhicules électriques en Ontario. On sait qu'Ottawa va financer en partie le projet. Est-ce que, selon vous, là, c'est normal que l'argent des contribuables finance ce genre de projet-là de multinationales?
J'ai manqué votre question. Si vous pouvez recommencer.
OK. C'est concernant la méga usine de véhicules électriques de Honda dans le sud de l'Ontario. Est-ce que vous trouvez ça normal que l'argent des contribuables sert à financer là, ce genre de projet de multinationales?
Merci pour la question. Donc, dans chaque cas où on utilise l'argent des contribuables, notre argent public pour des investissements, pour les néo-démocrates, un élément est clé. On doit avoir des garanties fermes que chaque sou, chaque dollar qu'on dépense pour des investissements internationaux, on a des garanties que ça va embaucher les travailleurs au Canada, ça va contribuer avec des garanties pour établir des entreprises qui vont rester au Canada. Donc, sans avoir ces garanties, je crois que c'est un problème de financer ce sort de programme. Si on a ces garanties que ça va embaucher des travailleurs canadiens, on garantit que les programmes ou les investissements, dans ce cas, les usines, vont rester au Canada. Donc, ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on peut appuyer.
Concernant ce que Mme Freeland a dit ce matin, puis ce qui a été mentionné aussi dans le budget par rapport aux nouveaux crédits d'impôt pour ce genre de programme-là, de véhicules électriques, est-ce que vous êtes à l'aise avec ça, que cet argent-là, que ce crédit-là bénéficie à des grandes entreprises automobiles?
Donc, je veux, avec ces questions, je veux voir les mêmes conditions. Si on donne un crédit d'impôt, on doit aussi avoir des garanties pour des travails ou pour des emplois au Canada. On doit avoir des garanties que les usines ou les investissements vont rester au Canada. On a vu dans le passé avec les conservateurs des chèques en blanc. Et les conservateurs, quand Pierre Poilievre était au pouvoir avec Harper, ils ont donné des grands chèques en blanc aux entreprises. Et puis, on a vu ce qu'ils ont fait avec ces chèques en blanc. Ils ont, de temps en temps, prendre l'argent et puis ils sont partis du pays. Ils ont pris l'argent et puis le garder dans leur coffre. Donc, sans avoir des conditions, des garanties, ce que ces argents, ce chèque en blanc va faire, les entreprises vont l'utiliser comme ils veulent. Mais pour moi, c'est important d'avoir des garanties que ça va aider les Canadiens, ça va créer des emplois, ça va créer des usines qui vont rester au Canada. Ça, c'est important pour moi. Si on parle des crédits d'impôt, si on parle des investissements, ça doit garantir un avantage pour les Canadiens.
Je ne vois plus de questions. We have no more questions. So this concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut notre conférence de presse. Merci.
Thanks again. Thank you so much, Nina. Big thank you to Linda for sharing your story and for being so eloquent. Big thank you for Bonita for hosting us here in your office and for all your great work. Thanks again. Merci. Merci beaucoup.